Peace, world. What's good, boxing fans? Thanks for pressing play on the Bite Down Boxing live stream. I am the host of the Bite Down Boxing podcast, the creator here at the Pay Me No Mind YouTube channel. You saw what the title is, and I'm not going to be on here long. I just wanted to talk about tonight's action on ESPN Plus. Let me check out something real quick before I get into this thing. Just wanted to make sure the chat was working in case anybody in case anybody did happen to fall through. But out in Staples Center, you know, just some initial thoughts. Yeah, the chat is working. So just some early thoughts. I thought it was a pretty decent turnout. I thought it was better than what I was expecting. You know, they didn't have to hide the, not move the lights around in the background to not show some of the empty seats up there. I think they said it was 10,000 people in attendance. You know, who knows what the comp numbers were and all of that. I haven't looked into any of that. But like I said, for the most part, I thought it was a pretty good turnout, a pretty dope environment. The undercard. Let's start with the undercard. The earlier action that was on ESPN Plus. Alexander Vesputin, welterweight, defending his USBA title against Alfredo Blanco. I continue to really struggle with becoming a huge fan of Vesputin. He's not knocking guys out. He is 12-0. He's decent, got a nice frame on him and everything, and he does some good stuff, but not exactly blowing me away at this particular point in time. I told you I've been harsh on Kavayaskis, Mean Machine. I don't really put Vesputin much above him, but he did get the unanimous decision in 10 rounds against Blanco. Dominated for most of the fight. Blanco had a very awkward style and just didn't pose much of a threat after the first round. Nothing big there. The Janibek Alam Kanuli, the fighter from Kazakhstan, against Christian Olivas. Olivas kind of surprised me a little bit. He couldn't get much done tonight against Janibek. Janibek, not the biggest puncher. He had a nice style to him and did some good stuff with his offhand or his lead hand. Was very smooth and confident with his defense and everything. But I'm just not interested in seeing a middleweight who doesn't have a whole lot of power. But he moved to 6-0. Vesputin moved to 13-0. The Jose Rodriguez fight against Ramel Snegur was a pretty decent scrap. Heavyweight Guido Vianello versus Lawrence Gabriel. I think Gabriel was from Syracuse, New York. A guy who survived like 4 gunshots, I believe is what they said. At first, the first time I looked at the fight, I thought Vianello really didn't show much. I thought he was a little slow and lumbering as he moved about. But when they showed it on the replay, pretty decent fighter. He got a first round knockout. Gabriel really didn't offer too much after he took an early left hook. He was kind of on the move from that point. But Guido, decent size on the guy. He's not a guy that's overweight, and just looks horrible physically. He's still very green. This just moves him to 3-0. I believe he was, a part of the most recent Olympics. I think that's 2016. So a guy with, plenty of time still left for him to develop. Not a bad heavyweight prospect. Not as impressed with him as I was with Sonny Kanto last week, or on the Volchdik card up in Philadelphia. Not quite as impressive as the foundation that I saw with Kanto, but I do see those guys maybe at some point You know, with the in-house fighting that we see over at Top Rank, I could see those guys mixing it up possibly at some point. But not a bad outing for Vianello. Who else? Oh, I knew Barbosa was gonna look pretty decent. I wasn't sure if he could get the knockout. I mean, he throws pretty good combinations. That's Arnold Barbosa Jr., super lightweight, NABF champion. But Alvarado, very early in the fight, Alvarado mile high Mike coming in at 40-4. I think he was on a 4 or 5 fight win streak after being on like a 6 loss streak, and he's in the same boat as Rios, in my opinion, and some of the other guys out there still hanging on. You match them up for a few good fights and give them a chance to kind of resurrect themselves and not end the career on a horrible note or on a on a bad stretch of fights. But I thought he was going to be in. It was a tall order for him tonight, in my opinion. But like I said, Barbosa, you know, a guy who they mentioned several times, came down from over 200 pounds as a fullback playing college football. To me, that's amazing that he could lose 70 pounds and now be competing at super lightweight. But pretty good boxer. I mean, I enjoy what I see from Barbosa. Puts his shots together very nicely. He's a good competitor. And he said, I saw a clip earlier, maybe it was an article on Boxing Scene, that, he didn't plan on taking it light on Alvarado. And Alvarado just didn't have much coming out the gates. And he jumped on him and kept the, he kept the pressure on him and made him look like an older fighter who's a little bit shot worn and, who's on his, second, and, let me get this thing muted. There we go. All right. But yeah, I just didn't really expect much from him, whatsoever. And I like that Barbosa took him apart in three rounds and looked good doing it. He's a guy that wants to face Hooker or Ramirez. So, yeah, good showing for Barbosa Jr. Like I said, not known as a big puncher, but definitely dispatched Mile High Mike pretty quickly and rather easily. Moving on to once the action moved over to well, actually it just moved to ESPN Plus, and the A crew or the A team came on in terms of the on-air talent with Max Kellerman, Bradley, Andre Ward, and Tessitore, Joey T. So we get into that part of it. A little disappointed that it was only a double header. We had the big gap in there, the long intermission and whatnot after Gilberto Ramirez's debut at 175 pounds. He gets the 4-round TKO win over Tommy Carpensey of Pennsylvania. I just saw Carpensey's younger brother, I believe, a month and a half ago or so down in Columbus for the Broadway Boxing Ohio edition of the Bella Entertainment's Broadway Boxing. And, it was just kind of interesting to see Carpensey on TV. He was supposed to fight in Cincinnati a couple of times, but it always fell through. But this was a decent test for Ramirez, who I thought opened the fight a little slowly. Maybe he wasn't warmed up. He looked a little lethargic. Wasn't a lot of explosion in his punches and everything. But I guess he did land that good shot in the first that Carpensey called out as the punch that started all the trouble for Carpensey. So but he just dominated over the 4 rounds, basically broke Carpensey down. He did warm up and start to look a little bit better. Very concerning that the guy is up weighing in at 174.5 pounds, enters the ring at 196. So, he could be figuring out some things with how his body is, the differences in fighting above super middleweight. They did mention that there's the opportunity or the possibility that he could stick around and face Callum Smith, possibly at 168 if the money was right. I would believe that after that performance, you know, it's funny how they throw different levels of competition in front of these guys, and they kind of arbitrarily decide what's a successful enough of an outing to you know, to make a decision. You know, Carpensy didn't do a whole lot, didn't offer a whole lot of resistance. He landed a couple of good shots and caught Ramirez here and there with some single shots, but for the most part, he was in not clearly in survival mode, but he definitely was. You know, he never got out of first gear. So, you know, he came back to the corner at the end of the first round, at the end of the fourth round, and just advised his corner that his father actually, that his rib was broken. He had some broken ribs and that he couldn't continue. So, not a bad look for Gilberto Ramirez. You know, he's a guy that can probably, you know, coming in at 196, I would imagine he might have another weight class or two to experiment around with if he gets the if he has the success that he's looking for at light heavyweight, which is, you know, it's a couple of good champions, it's a couple decent champions at light heavyweight. So we'll see what happens there. Let me get on to the reason why we all, well, those of us that did tune in to ESPN Plus. Let me jump into that real quick with Vasyl Lomachenko and $1 Million Crawler. Where do we want to start here? I mean, did you get enough? Did you get enough of them selling you how great Lomachenko is and how, you know, nobody is ready for what he brings to the table? You know, they were pouring it on pretty thick as far as you know, discussing his greatness and so on and so on, and selling him as the #1 pound for pound fighter. It's almost, to me, it's kind of asinine, really, to sit up and have that discussion between him and Bud Crawford. I'm not a big fan of the pound for pound argument, and so I don't know. I guess seeing the panels on TV go through that discussion, you know, I just don't know how you can match a guy up with 13 fights. I think 13. It was his 13th fight tonight. But and a guy who has 30-something fights in Terrence Crawford, is an undisputed champion, 2-division champion himself. And while we have to keep, you know, vacillating between these two guys. But anyway, that's what we're doing. But as far as tonight, I mean, we didn't have much faith. Most of us didn't have a whole lot of faith in Crawler. I mentioned earlier on the piece that I did yesterday, the afternoon Wood session, I believe, I mentioned that Crawler didn't look that great in the guy that he fought last time. I think his name was Yordan or Daoud Yordan. Yordan was giving Crawler some pretty good work, but he just didn't have a second or a third, you know, a plan B or a plan C to go to really win the rounds versus just competing. So I knew Crawler was going to be in trouble. But again, what I did mention was we did want to see what version of Loma we were going to get tonight. Were we going to see some confirmation of the decline or hints of the decline that we thought that we were seeing against Pedraza, or was that just a Loma who was coming back from a shoulder surgery and you know, wasn't 100% and got touched up a little bit? This fight right here, I still didn't see the same legs per se. I still didn't see some of the same movement per se with his lower body, but up top and mentally, I do think he was very comfortable. Obviously, he was using the right hand and his right hook in a way more destructive fashion than what we saw against Pedraja. But really, CROLLA, $1 Million CROLLA, just didn't have a whole lot to offer. You know, he couldn't sit down on anything over the first 2 rounds. He was constantly on his bike and moving. He was reactionary to everything that you know, that Lomo was throwing at him, and Lomo was dictating the pace, catching him with good shots, and basically just breaking the man down way more quickly than what we saw against you know, the last time out back in what was that, November, I believe. Late November was when he fought Pedraja. So yeah, just a good night. You know, the right hook that he took, looking at my notes a little bit, the right hook, obviously when you're moving in and out and able to move in within range and not worry about anything that's coming back and set up the right hook that he took him out with, one of the best shots I've seen Lomachenko land in a couple of fights, honestly. So good knockout, you know, great highlight. You know, at the top of the on the temple. I thought it was above the ear at first, but it looked like it did catch him up more so closer to the temple. You know, one almost you know, face down, tail up. You know, the way he hit the mat, you knew it was over. Oh, our man, our man Jack Reese. It's just getting to the point now that Jack Reese, every time we see this cat in the ring, is something extra. Every time we see Jack Reese in the ring now, something unique or extra happens. He getting a little extra with his instructions at the beginning of the match. He was over in CROLLA's corner after like the second round. I believe he visited the corner and stood there for like 15 or 20 seconds. I'm like, what is this cat doing? Like, this is a former world champion, a guy with 30 something, you know, 40, almost 40 fights or something. What are you doing over there in the second round? But he's over there, you know, observing the corner. And then we get into this third round where Lomachenko unleashes a flurry with CROLLA in the ropes, and they showed it from the aerial version. I did not see the man like go through the ropes really. I didn't see it. They showed it. They showed the replay or the sequence a couple of times. I just didn't see it. You know, for him to step in and anything that warranted a real 8 count. I've seen much worse situations and guys go into the ropes and back into the ropes several steps and fall back, and we didn't get an 8 count. So sometimes I'm just starting to think that Jack Reese is a little too comfortable with the rule book and kind of with his position as a referee, and he just in there doing different stuff nowadays. But not an egregious 8 count, but I felt like stepping in right there is what led to him catching that right hook in the next round. I mean, it could have been over right there if he would have just let the action continue. But like I said, he intervened. Oddly, that's one of the first times that I've seen you know, a standing 8 count get administered. But you know, it was what it was. We come back out. CROLLA tries to continue, but obviously, you know, Lomachenko knows that he has his man hurt pretty good. So at the 58th second of the 4th round is when we get this this phenomenal right hook that I'm sure will be one of the featured pieces or featured clips, you know, in the Lomachenko highlight reel. Good performance. This Lomachenko right here, I do like him against you know, what we heard come out today from the Money Team, CEO Leonard Ellerby. Horrible quote, in my opinion. Horrible quote. They've continued to down talk Lomachenko and to to talk about age, which he didn't. He looked back before the surgery, pre-surgery, in my opinion, tonight. But obviously, we got to take into consideration an opponent who wasn't able to do much of anything. But I just don't like what I'm hearing from Mayweather Promotions in terms of looking at this as a future fight. And then when we hear late July or whatever it is, the potential opponent could be Yuriokis Gamboa. Definitely not the type of opponent that I was looking for. In comparison to Jared Hurd, who's getting a homecoming fight in the DMV. With the cat like what's up, Damien? What's good, bro? But yeah, obviously with Jared Hurd bringing in an opponent like J-Rock, and it's possibly going to be a fight of the year candidate, in my opinion. And then in that same area to have another homecoming fight with Gervonta Tank Davis, and you announced that it's Yuriokis Gamboa. Pretty disappointing. But anyway, as it looks, there, the Mayweather Promotions is just not interested in doing anything great with Tank Davis and giving us anything to Luciano Osei. I kind of just ran through it, man, but I thought it was a pretty good outing. I mean, I think we had to keep into consideration that I think we had to keep into consideration the level of opposition that he was in against tonight, and that CROLLA very early on showed that he had zero answers for everything that Loma was throwing at him, and so it was basically fishing in a bucket, in my opinion. But he did what he was supposed to do, finished it off with the right hook, which was something that many of us were waiting to see, if we would see the explosion there back in his right hand and in his right hook. So I thought it was it was a very timely shot to do that. But other than that, CROLLA was the opponent that nobody wanted, which is in part because of the Comey injury. The IBF champion, Richard Comey, him and his hand injury, him not being in there tonight. So it just is what it is. But I was just getting into talking into the future, Luciano, that I think we saw a Lomachenko that doesn't move the needle at all for Mayweather Promotions to do any type of work to get to look into making that fight. I don't think that happens at all. And then Mikey Garcia, I don't know what Mikey Garcia is. I don't know what his plans are. I'm not gonna sit here and try to tell you that I'm a weight expert and I add any value in having a discussion and somebody going down from 147 back to 135. I don't know if they could do a catch weight at 137 or 138 or whatever. I don't know the game like that, and personally, I'm a little tired of all of the weight jumping or the division jumping with Mikey Garcia anyway. But I do think that would be a phenomenal fight if they could work it out. It might be a situation now that Garcia really doesn't have the options that he had pre-Errol Spence Jr. And maybe maybe they can put aside and mend some fences and have some earnest discussions about making that fight with Lomachenko. I still think Garcia has a decent size advantage on Lomachenko on fight night. But he just might not be ready for that type of action just yet. So I will say Teofimo Lopez has been talking a whole lot. DA, that was an anomaly in itself. Nobody was really taking those kind of chances before this. and nobody is really in the driver's seat of their own career to go out there and push, you know, and lobby and drive the bus and getting that type of situation, you know, made. It's not too many other guys who are clearly calling the shots in their career that can really do anything great. I mean, the only other situation I see right now is the Anthony Yardy cat or Yard that might go up and fight. That might go up and be fighting for a challenging Sergey Kovalev at light heavyweight, which I think that's a little too soon for him possibly. But other than that, I just think I think the Garcia situation with Spence was just such an anomaly that doesn't factor in anything one way or the other, in my opinion. But getting back to Teofimo Lopez, I think we saw Lomachenko tonight that kind of teaches that kid that he's not quite ready just yet. The movement that he had tonight, you know, pressuring CROLLA, the feints, you know, jabbing with the right hand to set up everything with the left, a little bit of body work that we saw, the right hook being back. We still didn't see him, you know, doing that step around and getting to all of the angles that he used to get to and turning CROLLA a whole lot, but I just think he felt like he didn't need all of that tonight. You know, sometimes the straightest, the quickest point between A and B is a straight line, and I think that's the attack that he could use tonight on CROLLA. But I think Lopez, I know he put the threat out there that January 1st he was going up to super lightweight. I think that needs to be a decision that, you know, if he really, I mean, he's talking about he's 21 and he's growing and it's really difficult to make lightweight. I think if, you know, you might have to make that sacrifice. I really don't like Teofimo Lopez. And I think if you're trying, he seems like an ambitious kid. Him and his dad, they seem like an ambitious duo. So why would you take away the opportunity to get you a world title at the lowest weight class possible? Because once he goes up, he can't go back down. So why be completely impatient and move up, and then maybe you only have an opportunity to become a one division or two division, you know, world champion? I think he was mentioning, Teofimo, I believe, was calling out that he could possibly go up to middleweight by the end of his career. I don't know if that's possible or not. He's not a very tall fighter. I believe he's like 5'6" or 5'7", I believe. So I don't know. I really wouldn't be too confident in him going up to 160 pounds. But I definitely think we saw a good enough version of Lomachenko tonight to give some pause with, you know, with pushing for that fight, at least. And I think Lomachenko is I think that's a legitimate situation or reasoning for himself to avoid that fight, is that he's trying to unify the division and put some pressure on the powers to be to work this thing out and start reaching across the aisle and making some of these cross-promotional fights that we need to see now that everybody has the long-term deals that they want. It's time to start it's time to start figuring out a way to deliver the best fights possible. And definitely when we have, you know, veterans out there and experienced guys like you know, Lomachenko and a Mikey Garcia, like, they need to figure that out. They really need to figure that out. I do, before I get ready to get up out of here, please do check in the description. I hope this thing came up under the title that I put it under. But I had the recent this week's podcast out there talking about Shields and Hammer, tomorrow night's undisputed middleweight fight. I had a female fighter on there named Kali Reis. She was my guest on there. Reese actually fought Christina Hammer 2 times. So I thought she had some very good insight to let some of us know, you know, whether or not she can stand up to the hungry and determined, you know, the youthful Claressa Shields that we expect to see. So she spoke on that. I also had some Q&A that I was able to get some questions in to Claressa Shields and Christina Hammer. So I got a segment out there on that. All of the time stamps are in the description on the podcast, so you don't have to listen to me. You can go straight to the sections of the podcast that you might want to hear. And then also my opening guest on there is a brother that does has a YouTube channel called Junior the Truth. He does a morning show on boxing Monday through Friday, 7:45 a.m. Eastern time. The Punch Junkie Morning Show. And then he's also the moderator for the LDBC's Smoke City Mobcast that comes on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So I mixed it up. One thing that I wanted to get out there was I didn't really care for the way that some podcasters and the new media cat or the YouTube media cats, I really didn't like the way that they came at Bud Crawford last week when the story broke about the situation with Top Rank having a settlement against him for $520,000. I thought that was pretty reckless how a couple of people ran out there with their reporting on that. So me and Junior the Truth chopped it up in a much different way. And I also had to ask some questions about Deontay Wilder. When the hell is he going to issue or send over a contract? You know, we keep hearing the sales pitch right now from Showtime and from his camp of how popular he is and he's the best fight. That's the biggest fight to be made in the game. Well, at some point in time, if that's your status, how the hell do you turn around? How do you then turn around and ask somebody to give you a 50-50 deal? You should be making a deal. You should be sending the deal over. So I'm a straight shooter with it. And that's what I believe. If we're ever going to get to the Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight, you know, you can't sit back and just it's people making deals and making offers to you left and right. And you're just what's your next business move and getting us the fight that we all want to see. But other than that, man, I'm getting ready to get on out of here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking in with me at the end of the night. All in all, you know, we didn't have a lot of expectations for tonight's action to be that great. But like I said, with Lomachenko in the mix, him being a top pound for pound guy, and knowing the way that Top Rank, you know, will probably have him fighting again in another 3.5 or 4 months or something, depending on which opponent they try to line up. But Comay's hand, he was cleared earlier this week to resume training. So you know, if you know, I would imagine that they kick the tires on whether or not Mikey Garcia is interested in that fight or not. But I think we all know the likelihood of those negotiations being worked out. So I would imagine that it's Richard Comey who we see, and I'm pretty sure that they'll get that together as quickly as possible. So other than that, you know, like I said, please hit that subscribe button. If you like anything I was on here chopping it up about tonight, please hit that like button. Do check out the link in the description. Check out the podcast. Some pretty good information on there. Like I said, insight from Kali Reis. If you do plan on tuning in tomorrow night and checking out the women's fight, we did break that down. Kaylee gave her analysis on it. I did my thing on it. And then Junior the Truth also put his stuff out there. So again, thanks for rocking with me. I'm going to get on up out of here. 1.